You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. Sadly, I am gonna start with Aaron Rodgers. There are about 75 million things I would rather talk about. I'd rather go more into detail on the Lincoln assassination. I'm reading a great book on it. Would you like me to do that instead? You have no idea how much I hate talking about Aaron Rodgers. I'll talk about him on the football field 7 days out of the week. But this COVID nonsense, I hate talking about it. So why am I talking about it? Because it is the biggest story. I'll be completely honest. The first time that I spoke about Rodgers, I had not watched his interview with Pat McAfee. The reason I didn't is because I didn't want to be lied to for over 40 minutes. You know, I have better things to do with my time than hear COVID disinformation. But one night, I had a tough time falling asleep. So it's like, you know what, let me watch this. If nothing else, it'll put me to sleep. It actually didn't. I did watch the whole thing. And I watched his interview that he did yesterday with McAfee. The reason that I'm bringing up his first interview is because some of the things that I criticized him for, like not getting the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, he did address. He was concerned about the J&J vaccine because it had been paused earlier this year. Is that a good reason to not get the vaccine? The answer is no. After that pause, it was deemed to be safe. You can get it today. It wouldn't be made available if it wasn't safe. But out of all the reasons to not get that vaccine, on the spectrum of absolutely insane to not as insane, that's closer to not as insane. It's still insane. He still should have gotten it, but I'll be fair. At least he had a sorta, kinda okay-ish reason to not get the J&J shot. Again, he still should have gotten it, but it's not like he threw out any crazy conspiracy theories. But there were a couple things that he said yesterday that I do want to talk about. He may not like this, but I do think it's important to hold his feet to the fire. I don't think he can get away with this. I think this is the kind of thing that we'll be talking about for a while. When you think about Aaron Rodgers, this is one of the things you'll think about. he was certainly less fiery yesterday than he was last week. It could just be that he's done talking about this. He's just mentally exhausted. He didn't want to do it anymore. I can understand that. But there are still some things that he said that I need to talk about. The first is that Rogers acknowledged that he misled people when he said that he was immunized. That was his word. Misled. It's an interesting way to pronounce lied to, but okay. Maybe it's that Wisconsin accent. It's not good enough that you apologized. You lied to all your fans. Like, you said that people were aware that you were unvaccinated. I have no idea whether that's true or not. Nothing's ever come out in support of that. He said that the media was sitting on this story. The media would never sit on that. Hell, that would be published at 2 o'clock in the morning. If that's when it came across Adam Schefter's phone or whoever knew. I just don't believe that. But you can lie to your teammates. You can lie to your coaches. You can lie to your front office. That's your issue. But when you start lying to your fans, to the people that look up to you, that's when I take offense. You have now perpetuated the lie that natural remedies are just as effective, if not more effective, in fighting the coronavirus than the vaccines. That is absolutely untrue. You can throw out whatever obscure study you want. He mentioned this study in India last week. Yeah, that's where I go to get my medical advice. India. The reality is, and I can't believe I need to say this, seeing as though vaccines have been available for almost a year now, but the reality is, scientific consensus is that what offers you the best protection against the coronavirus is one of these vaccines. Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson. That is what scientific consensus is. For an NFL quarterback to go against that, and for people to take him seriously, is laughable. If Aaron Rodgers wants to be an idiot, okay, you can't cure stupidity. But when he goes on the Pat McAfee show and spouts all this garbage, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with him lying to people and endangering people's lives. And you should too. Scientific consensus says that Aaron Rodgers is wrong. He is not immunized against the coronavirus. He is right that the vaccines don't prevent you from getting the coronavirus. He is right that you can still spread the coronavirus if you're vaccinated. But what the vaccines do is it greatly reduces the odds of complications arising from COVID-19. What that means is, if you're vaccinated, you can have the coronavirus, but not know about it because you feel perfectly fine. You want to tell me that's scary in and of itself because we'll have people spreading it that don't know that they're spreading it? See, the thing is, it only matters to the unvaccinated. I'll use myself as an example. Before I got the vaccine, when the pandemic was still raging, I didn't want to go outside a lot. I ordered in a lot, wore masks everywhere, really didn't go out a ton. I didn't want to get this disease that could potentially kill me and could kill the people that I care about. Now that I'm vaccinated, I'm going out more. I'm spending time with people that I really haven't seen in a while. Obviously, I'm going to a ton of sporting events. I've returned to some level of normalcy. Why? Because the substantial odds are that the vaccine will keep me safe. Maybe it won't prevent me from getting the coronavirus. It honestly wouldn't stun me if in September I got it. But I didn't feel it because I'm vaccinated. Do I know if I've never gotten it? No. Do I know that I've definitely gotten it? No. To the best of my knowledge, I have never gotten the coronavirus. But if I did, because I have the vaccine, the substantial odds are that I'll be safe and I'll keep the people around me safe. You're right that there's a non-zero chance of that, but it's still substantially low. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm not a doctor, and that plays into a point that I'm going to make in a couple minutes, but I feel safe going out because I have the vaccine. Getting the vaccine makes me feel like I can keep myself and my loved ones safe while still doing the things that I enjoy. If you don't feel that way, if you're still scared to death to go out, God bless you. That's perfectly fine. But the reality is, scientific consensus is that getting the vaccine frees you up to do the things that make you happy. If you want to play it safe, okay. But there's a reason that some places have vaccine mandates. It's not because they want to control you. It's not because they like being annoying. It's not because they like losing business. It's because scientific consensus is that the best way to keep everyone safe is to ensure that everyone gets vaccinated. And they are hoping that people will want to utilize their business so much that that will encourage them to get vaccinated. If some people are turned off by that, okay. That just opens the door for more vaccinated people. Like, I'll tell you, on a personal level, I have no problem with vaccine mandates. None. But I do acknowledge the fact that we're never going to get to 100%. And there is going to come a point where we're going to need to learn to live with this virus, if we're not there already. What exactly does that entail? I don't know exactly. Again, not a doctor. But, to go back to my main point, getting vaccinated against the coronavirus is by far and away the best way to keep yourself safe. It's even more effective than just staying in your house. Because realize, if you're just staying in your house, and you order out, and that person leaves your dinner outside, you're still breathing in that person's air for the split second that you're out there. So that means you can still get the coronavirus. The question that we really should be asking is this. Not how can we prevent people from getting the coronavirus? Because realize, it took hundreds and hundreds of years to eradicate smallpox. We don't have hundreds and hundreds of years to deal with COVID-19. The question that we should be asking is, how do we manage it? How do we make it so people who contract this virus don't go to the hospital, don't end up on ventilators, and don't buy the ranch? The answer to that is to get vaccinated, not to get immunized, according to Aaron Rodgers' logic. This guy's a freaking NFL quarterback. He thinks he's a scientist. What an idiot. He claims to be an athlete and not an activist. And look, I understand that in a perfect world, this never gets out. Like, we never know that Rodgers is unvaccinated. In Aaron Rodgers' perfect world, that's what happens. He's still perpetuating the lie. But the reality is, once you go on Pat McAfee's show and say to millions of people, this is what I'm doing, this is what can keep you safe, you become an activist. When you vouch for bodily autonomy, whatever the hell that is, that's a new term, never heard that one before, you become an activist. Like, quite frankly, Kyrie Irving is handling this better than Aaron Rodgers. Say what you want about Kyrie Irving, but at least he's not appearing on podcasts saying, this is why I'm unvaccinated, this is what it can do to you, this is what really keeps you safe, blah, blah, blah. At least Irving is just in his own world right now. I'd rather Rodgers just do that. Like, okay, it comes out that he's unvaccinated, he has the coronavirus, he's gonna miss the Chiefs game. Don't go on Pat McAfee. Don't spout all this garbage. Say nothing. Then when you come back, you can do your best Marshawn Lynch impression. You can just say, I'm not going to talk about it. That may upset some people, but it's better than what you're doing now. It's better than extolling the virtues of ivermectin. It's better than encouraging a homeopathic remedy to the coronavirus. It's better than flying in the face of scientific consensus. That's the thing. That's my whole thing here. Someone like Aaron Rodgers has the ear of millions of people. If this guy endorses a local Green Bay bakery, that bakery will become inundated with orders. That is the pull that Aaron Rodgers has. In my opinion, that gives him a moral obligation to get vaccinated, because scientific consensus is that we should all be vaccinated unless you have some incredibly valid reason to not be vaccinated. And even then, I'm struggling to think of what one of those reasons could be. A religious objection, okay, I sorta kinda understand that. But not to get too preachy, I believe that the number one thing that God wants from us is to preserve life. The best thing you can do is to keep yourself and people around you safe. Again, I really don't want to get too preachy. That is just my personal opinion. And clearly you care about it because you're listening to this now. See, again, I realize the platform that I have. And my platform is a lot smaller than Aaron Rodgers' platform. Why do I feel more of an obligation to do right and to set people down the right path than Aaron Rodgers does? You want to tell me he really thinks that being unvaccinated is the best way to go? Maybe that's true, but that flies in the face of scientific consensus. And when you do that, I have a problem with that. If just one person doesn't get the vaccine because Aaron Rodgers hasn't gotten it, and that person gets incredibly sick, or worse, Aaron Rodgers should be sued for damages. You're an athlete, not an activist. Then just shut up and do the right thing. No one's asking you to go out in support of COVID vaccines. If you're allergic to the 2 mRNA vaccines, okay. A lot of people find that hard to believe, but I'll run with it. Get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Oh, it's not safe. Yes, it is. Yes, it was withdrawn, but now it's back. Millions of people have gotten it and are perfectly fine because of it. Here's the thing that the COVID vaccine deniers do. They pull out these outlier stories that may or may not be true, but they don't look at the millions of other people that disprove that narrative. In math, there is something called the law of truly large numbers. To put it in layman's terms, given enough samples, you'll find one that's extraordinary. Give it enough time, and you'll find someone who's been struck by lightning twice, who's won the lottery more than once, who have these incredibly odd things happen to them. We can apply the law of truly large numbers to people who have gotten the coronavirus vaccine. Yeah, a few have had adverse reactions. In fact, more than a few. No question. Over 229 million people have gotten at least one dose of the Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So yeah, some are going to have bad reactions to it. But what about the vast majority that don't? 1 million people got the shot, they're fine. One person gets it, they're not fine. Hey, look at this one person. Look at this one person. That's the playbook of the people who don't like the COVID vaccines. The reality is you can disprove their logic with math. Aaron Rodgers is right. He is an athlete, not an activist. Because he's a very bad one. He is a bad activist. So he needs to stick with being a great athlete. And let me say this. I don't listen to Pat McAfee a lot. I haven't listened to him enough to form an opinion on him. I don't go out of my way to listen to him, but if he's on, if I'm with someone and someone's listening to him, they really like him, I'm not gonna ask him to turn it off. I really don't care, but the way that Pat McAfee conducted those interviews, to me, is 100% wrong. He let Rodgers say a lot of that stuff unchecked. He didn't throw out any counter-arguments. He didn't throw out scientific consensus. I mean, I'll say this. I know why he didn't. He has a great relationship with Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't want to squander that. I totally get that. I understand that. But what should be more important to McAfee is giving his audience the truth. Not Aaron Rodgers' truth, because Aaron Rodgers' truth isn't truth. He is flying in the face of scientific consensus. Quite frankly, if Aaron Rodgers had been on my show and had said some of those things, I would have cut him off. I would have presented counter-arguments. Maybe he wouldn't have liked it. Maybe it would have gotten combative. Maybe it would have devolved into a screaming match. But I would rather have that than allow my show to be a platform for pseudoscience. I mean, this is really what McAfee should have done. He should have had Rodgers on, but instead of him and AJ being the only other people on the show, have someone present the other side. This isn't something like a sports debate where you can have people on that just support your view. Like, if my view is that Aaron Boone should be fired as manager of the Yankees, and I'm only bringing people on to talk Yankees that agree with that, that's one thing. It's a little dishonest, but it's not the end of the world. To allow Aaron Rodgers to go off for 40 minutes spouting lies, going unchecked, I have a major problem with that. Like, the reality is, I'm the wrong person to be telling you what scientific consensus is. I'm the wrong person to tell you to get vaccinated. You should listen to doctors, not me. You come to me for sports opinions. Anyone who comes to me for medical advice is really barking up the wrong tree. But having said that, Aaron Rodgers is in the news. Having said that, the coronavirus is in the news. I can't just ignore it. The only thing that I can do is tell you scientific consensus. I can certainly inject my personal opinion that Aaron Rodgers is an idiot, that Pat McAfee did the wrong thing by not having someone present the other side. But when it comes to discussions about the coronavirus, the only thing that I can do is tell you what scientific consensus is. That's the only morally okay thing to do. The fact that other people don't know that, like Aaron Rodgers, Pat McAfee, and Joe Rogan, is absolutely sickening to me. Alright, that's it. I'm done. I'm done talking about this. If something else comes up, I'll address it, but you have no idea how much I don't want to address it. Instead, I want to talk about the Cleveland Browns locking up a couple offensive linemen. They signed Wyatt Teller to a 4-year extension worth $56.8 million. That's an AAV of $14.2 mil per year. And they signed Joel Bitonio to a 3-year extension worth $48 million. That's an AAV of 16 mil per year. Say what you want about the Cleveland Browns, but they know how important an offensive line is. They made a notable investment in J.C. Tretter after he left the Packers. They drafted Jedrick Wills in the first round, and not this past draft, but the draft before. Even though he hasn't been great, he was taken with the 10th overall pick. That is a high investment. And he hasn't been awful. Hasn't been great, hasn't been awful. They probably should have taken Mekhi Becton, but I'm glad they didn't. They signed Jack Conklin to a big deal, convinced him to leave the Titans. Now they're locking up Teller and Bitonio, two of the best offensive guards in the NFL. According to Pro Football Focus, this year Teller has an 89.8 overall grade. Bitonio is worse. His overall grade is 88.7. Oh my god, he's 1.1 points behind. Like, part of the argument against Baker Mayfield is the fact that the Browns have surrounded him with all this talent, and Mayfield hasn't set the world on fire. Hasn't been dreadful, but certainly hasn't been the perennial Pro Bowler that we all thought he'd be after his rookie season. But I do like Mayfield, and I love what the Browns have built. I'm really happy for them that they've righted the ship. Will they make the playoffs this year? God only knows. I mean, they should. There's no excuse for them not to. Season ends today, they're out of the playoffs, but they're tied technically with the Patriots for that third wildcard spot. I mean, you think about where the Browns were just 4 years ago. They were 0-16. To now have the franchise quarterback in Mayfield, and yes, he is a franchise quarterback. To have a really good coach in Kevin Stefanski. Someone who really knows what he's doing in Andrew Berry running the ship. Having this incredible assemblage of talent with Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Myles Garrett, Anthony Walker, and one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. It's a great time to be a Browns fan. It gives me hope as a Jets fan. If a team as snake-bit as the Browns can right the ship, it gives me hope that my team will right the ship at some point. Will it be in the near future? God only knows, but seeing what the Browns are doing gives me hope. Outstanding job by the Browns in locking up Teller and Bitonio. The contracts are very fair. I have no issue with them whatsoever. The future's incredibly bright in Cleveland. Alright, now I'll give you some college football Valk talk. Because the CFP committee released their second rankings of the season. Some big things to break down. MSU, after losing to Purdue, dropped to 7. So I guess technically speaking, they're still in the hunt for a berth, but they really need to win out. If they don't, they have no shot. It's just that simple. And they have to face OSU at the Horseshoe and Penn State. Penn State they can beat. That's in East Lansing. OSU and Columbus, that's not going to happen. MSU's CFP dreams are dead. As is Wake Forest's. They moved from 9 to 12. It always seemed like an uphill battle for the Demon Deacons, but the loss to UNC was really the death blow. The top 6 is now Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, OSU, Cincy, and Michigan. Is there a chance that an undefeated Cincinnati team is excluded from the CFP? Sadly, the answer is yes. I'm just amazed that that can happen. I understand that they did it with UCF. Like, I shouldn't be surprised. But what more does Cincy need to do? Here's the question I have. Alright, Oregon, it seems like, is going to have an easy path to a 1-loss season. I understand that Utah's a good team, and the game is in Utah, but I think Oregon's better. I do think they're going to win that game. OSU does have a tough end to the season. Purdue, MSU, and at Michigan. But Michigan never beats OSU. OSU is better than Purdue, and they're better than MSU. Is it possible that they lose one of those games? The answer is yes. Is it likely? Probably not. So that brings me to Alabama. Alabama's end to the season is going to be incredibly rough. They've got Arkansas. Granted, at Bryant-Denny, but I like Arkansas. I think they can make the Tide work. They're at Auburn. That's always a tough matchup, the Iron Bowl, one of the best rivalries in college sports. And then the SEC title game, which is going to be against Georgia. I can see Alabama losing at least one game. So here's my question. Does a 2-loss Alabama team make the CFP over Cincinnati? It better not. I'll be really upset if it does. I have no problem with Alabama being in the CFP. You want to tell me they shouldn't be the 2 seed? You have an argument there. I mean, one thing that I really like is quality of the loss. Who did you lose to? If you lost to a team like Indiana or, Arizona or someone like that, a bad team, I'm going to look at that loss a lot worse than I look at a loss to a team like Georgia or Alabama. OSU's one loss came early in the season against Oregon. Was that a game that the Buckeyes should have won? It was in Columbus, so the answer is yes, but Oregon's a great team this year. Who did Alabama lose to? Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a good team, not as good as Oregon. So you want to tell me you put OSU ahead of Alabama? I can make that argument. You want to tell me that Alabama gets Alabama points because they're Alabama? I get that too. Then again, how can I leave Oregon out of the mix since they beat OSU? Yes, Stanford is a dreadful team. The Ducks never should have lost to the Cardinal, but how do you put OSU in and leave Oregon out when Oregon beat OSU? You can't. I mean, I really have no problem with the top 3. I'm fine with that order. I would move Cincy to 4 ahead of OSU. I'm not crazy about Cincy this year, just from an eye test perspective, but Cincy's undefeated. They can't do anything more. Like, the thing is, with a school like UTSA or Oklahoma, yeah, maybe they're not passing the eye test. Maybe you see them picking on teams like Rice, Louisiana Tech, and UTEP. So how can you put them in the top 4? How can you put Oklahoma in the top 4 when they had to make a quarterback change? By the way, Caleb Williams looks absolutely incredible. The second coming of Jason White. Oklahoma certainly isn't passing the eye test, but they're undefeated, and they're a Big 12 school. Oklahoma's behind Michigan. There is no planet where Michigan is better than Oklahoma. I mean, I gotta be honest with you. Truthfully, there's a part of me that wants the top 4 to be Georgia, Cincy, Oklahoma, and UTSA. Put all the undefeated schools in. And here's my argument. What more do they need to do? In no other sport does a team with a worse record get into the playoffs. The Toronto Blue Jays weren't in the playoffs. Why? Because they finished one game behind the Red Sox and Yankees. The Dodgers didn't win the NL West. Why? Because they were one game behind the Giants. In no other sport do we use the eye test like this. Believe me, I appreciate the eye test, but there does come a point where you need to look at a school like Cincy, Oklahoma, and UTSA and say, What more do these schools need to do? I mean, not for nothing, but UTSA is behind Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 6-3. Why would Wisconsin be your choice over UTSA? Why would Michigan be your choice over Oklahoma? It's freaking Oklahoma. It's a Big 12 school. We're not talking about Conference USA. We're not talking about the AAC. We're talking about the Big 12. I'm not in love with Oklahoma this year from an eye test perspective. Like, if I'm looking at the eye test, yes, these are the 4 best teams in the nation. Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, OSU. Those are the 4 best teams from an eye test perspective. But the record does matter. Alright, I don't like it when undefeated teams miss out on the playoff. Here's my question. Does a 2-loss team get in over Cincy or Oklahoma? Cincy, probably not. Maybe Alabama would, because they're Alabama. I don't think Oregon would. I don't think OSU would. But let's say Oregon loses the Civil War. And let's say OSU loses to Purdue. Does Oklahoma leapfrog them? They're behind Cincy, Michigan, and Michigan State. What if Michigan beats OSU? Then you gotta put Michigan in. What if MSU beats OSU? You've gotta put MSU in, right? Well, Oklahoma is left out to dry. They're screwed. It makes no sense to me. See, what it boils down to is this. We need more than 4 teams. We need 8. Think about what 8 would look like right now. Georgia, Oklahoma, Alabama, MSU, Oregon, Michigan, and OSU, Cincinnati. Those would be sensational games. And I'd have no problem with Notre Dame sneaking in. I'd have no problem with Oklahoma State sneaking in. Maybe a 2-loss A&M sneaks in. A 2-loss Baylor. A 2-loss BYU. Maybe Wake Forest gets in. We just need more than 4 teams. It's that simple. I'll close this show out with some MLB Valk talk, specifically on my beloved Yankees. Andy Martino wrote an article for SNY saying that for the Yankees, Matt Olson is there for the taking. I guess by extension, he's there for any team that wants him. And there are a lot of teams that should be in on Matt Olson. I mean, maybe the Braves don't need him if they bring back Freeman. Maybe the Giants don't need him since they have Brandon Belt. Maybe the Cardinals don't need him because they have Paul Goldschmidt. Maybe the White Sox don't need him because they have Jose Abreu. Maybe the Blue Jays don't need him because they have Vlad Guerrero Jr. But even then, I could see some of those teams moving some pieces around to make room for Matt Olson. Olson's that talented. Last year he had 271 with 39 home runs and 111 RBIs. He made his first All-Star team. Here's a guy who's been very durable. Excellent glove at first. Has won 2 Gold Gloves. He's under team control through this coming season and the season after. He's one of the most underrated players in baseball. I will say that John Morosi of the MLB Network seconded Martino's sentiment that the Yankees are in on Olsen. John Heyman of the MLB Network said that Chris Bassett, Sean Manaea, and Frankie Montas are also on the trade block. So yay, another fire sale in Oakland, because that's what those fans want. The Athletics will not be happy until no one attends their games. Literally, no one. They were dead last in attendance in the American League this year. Only 700,000 people went to their games. Evidently, that's not low enough. They won 86 games. No, we need to cut payroll. We must always be cutting payroll. We must move to Las Vegas. We must move to Montreal. We must move to Nashville. Get us out of Oakland. God, I feel sorry for Athletics fans. Look, the Yankees should be in on Olsen. I'd be okay with giving Luke Voit another chance, but it seems like Brian Cashman has moved on from him. Anthony Rizzo's gonna want a big contract. So who would you rather pay? A 32-year-old Rizzo? Or Matt Olson for 2 years at an arbitration rate, and then by the time he gets his big boy contract, he'll be 30. They're both lefties. They're very similar players. In fact, Olson may be better than Rizzo. Rizzo was not great with the Yankees. Wasn't bad. Fan favorite. I wouldn't mind having him back. But don't make it seem like he's Lou Gehrig. The Yankees can move on from Rizzo. I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with them moving on from Voit. Sure, trade for Olsen. I have no problem with that. Like I said, a ton of teams should be in on Olsen. And a ton of teams should be in on Bassett, Mania, and Montas. I'll rapid fire through their stats. Bassett went 12-4 with a 3.15 ERA. Mania went 11-10 with a 3.91 ERA. Montas went 13-9 with a 3.37 ERA. I could see a world where the Yankees pull off a trade for Olsen and one of those pitchers. Maybe another team does it. Maybe they go in 4 separate trades. Maybe 2 separate trades. Maybe 3. I mean, it's a fire sale in Oakland, so everyone's going to look to take advantage of it. As they should. I mean, if the Athletics are giving away talent, you owe it to your fans to take advantage of that. Just because the Athletics are doing their fans dirty doesn't mean that you can do your fans dirty. Every team in baseball should be in on these pitchers. And every team that needs a first baseman or a DH should be in on Olsen. Hell, why stop there? Tony Kemp is a really good utility player. He can play second. He can play left. Go after him. Go after a guy like Lou Trevino. He's 30. Proof that he can close. Went 7-8 with a 3.18 ERA and 22 saves. He'd be a good closer. Great setup guy. Why not? Blow the whole team up. Look, the Yankees should be in on Olsen. I'd love him with the Yankees. He'd make perfect sense. I'd love one of these pitchers in pinstripes. I really don't care which one. Bassett, Mania, or Montas. Doesn't matter to me. I'll take any one of them. But it's not just the Yankees. Every team in baseball is going to be connected to the Athletics. The Yankees are going to have some competition. So when that happens, the price is going to go up. Maybe you shouldn't have traded those guys for the Italian Stallions. Huh, Cash? Double down on a lost season. Way to go, idiot. And I do feel sorry for Athletics fans. They don't deserve this. They're good fans. No fan base deserves this. Another fire sale for no good reason. Don't make it seem like the owner's poor. He's a billionaire. He can put money into the team overnight. He just chooses not to. It's sickening. It's absolutely sickening. Until tomorrow, I'm Jacob Valk. And always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.